Welcome back to another episode of Infidelity Tales Lab. We're thankful for your continued viewership. Before we begin, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? We love knowing our global reach. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. The Foundation Cracks. Vincent Caldwell stood 6 feet 3 inches of pure intimidation, his steel-gray eyes reflecting the same coldness that had built his construction empire from nothing. At 45, he commanded respect through fear and results, never through charm or empty promises. His hands, scarred from years of manual labor before becoming a millionaire, gripped the hospital corridor wall as the doctor delivered the words that would shatter his carefully constructed world. "I'm sorry, Mr. Caldwell. Trevor didn't make it." His 17-year-old son, the golden boy with a full scholarship to MIT, was gone. The drunk driver who had T-boned Trevor's car walked away with minor injuries, while his son lay crushed in twisted metal. Vincent's jaw clenched so hard his teeth ground audibly. He had built his fortune by never showing weakness, by crushing anyone who stood in his way. Yet here he stood powerless against death itself. Returning home to their sprawling estate in the hills, Vincent expected to find his wife of 20 years, Diana, devastated. Instead, he found her in the study, composed and calculating, seated across from their family attorney, Harold Grimsby, a nervous man who had handled their affairs for a decade. "Vincent," Diana said without looking up from the documents spread across the mahogany desk. Her auburn hair was perfectly styled, her makeup untouched by tears. "We need to discuss Trevor's college fund." The $160,000 account had been untouched, waiting for their son's freshman year. Vincent had started building it the day Trevor was born, adding to it with every successful project, every conquered competitor. "What's to discuss?" Vincent's voice carried the edge that made grown men step back. Diana finally met his eyes, and Vincent saw something that chilled him more than his son's death. Cold calculation where grief should have been. "I want you to transfer that money to my personal account. Trevor won't need it now, and I have plans." The silence in the room was deafening. Harold fidgeted with his pen, clearly uncomfortable with the direction this conversation was taking. "Plans?" Vincent's voice dropped to a whisper, a tone his employees knew meant someone was about to be destroyed. "I'm not staying in this mausoleum of a marriage, Vincent. I haven't been happy in years, and with Trevor gone." She shrugged as if discussing the weather. "There's nothing keeping me here." Vincent studied his wife's face, seeing her clearly for perhaps the first time in years. Diana had been a waitress when they met, beautiful, ambitious, and eager to escape her mundane life. He had given her everything: luxury, status, security. Now, with her son's body not yet cold, she was already planning her exit strategy. "The money stays where it is," Vincent said finally. Diana's perfectly painted lips curved into a smile that held no warmth. "We'll see about that, darling." As Vincent left the study, his mind was already racing. 20 years in construction had taught him to read people, to spot weakness and exploit it. Diana's sudden boldness suggested she wasn't acting alone. Someone was backing her play, someone who didn't know the kind of man they were challenging. Vincent had built his empire by being more ruthless than his competitors, more unforgiving than his enemies. He had started with nothing but determination and a willingness to do whatever it took to win. Now, as he stood in his son's empty bedroom, surrounded by MIT acceptance letters and football trophies, he felt that familiar cold fury building inside him. Diana had made a fatal mistake. She had shown him her true nature at the worst possible moment, when grief and rage were consuming him. She wanted to play games with their dead son's money? Vincent would teach her what it meant to cross a man who had nothing left to lose. The war had begun, and Diana had no idea what kind of monster she had awakened. Chapter 2. The Betrayal Unveiled. The funeral was a masterpiece of small-town theater. Vincent stood granite-faced beside the casket, watching as Trevor's friends and teachers paid their respects. Diana played the grieving mother perfectly, dabbing at her eyes with a silk handkerchief while accepting condolences. But Vincent noticed what others missed: how her gaze kept drifting to a man standing at the back of the crowd. Bradley Morse was Trevor's guidance counselor, a smooth-talking 42-year-old who had always been too friendly with the parents, especially the mothers. Vincent had dismissed him as harmless, a divorced educator living paycheck to paycheck. Now, watching Bradley's subtle nods toward Diana, Vincent began to understand the game being played. After the service, as friends and family gathered at the Caldwell estate, Vincent excused himself to his home office. He pulled out his laptop and began researching Bradley Morse with the same methodical precision he used to destroy business competitors. What he found made his blood boil. Bradley had been having affairs with married women for years, always targeting wealthy wives in troubled marriages. 3 previous relationships had ended in divorces, each one leaving the husband financially devastated while Bradley disappeared with a substantial payout. The man was a professional homewrecker, and Vincent's grieving wife was his latest mark. A soft knock on the office door interrupted his investigation. Vincent's longtime business partner and closest friend, Marcus Rodriguez, entered carrying 2 glasses of whiskey. "Thought you might need this," Marcus said, setting the glass on the desk. At 48, Marcus was one of the few people Vincent trusted completely. They had started their construction company together in a garage, building it into a multi-million-dollar operation through blood, sweat, and strategic ruthlessness. "I need something stronger than whiskey," Vincent muttered, accepting the drink. "I saw how Diana was acting today," Marcus said carefully. "This isn't how a grieving mother behaves." Vincent showed Marcus the laptop screen, explaining what he had discovered about Bradley Morse. Marcus's face darkened as he absorbed the information. "That bastard," Marcus growled. "He's been grooming Diana for months, hasn't he?" "Probably started right after Trevor got his MIT acceptance," Vincent replied. "She knew the college fund was substantial. This whole thing was planned. What are you going to do?" Vincent closed the laptop and leaned back in his chair. "I'm going to give them exactly what they want. And then some." The next morning, Vincent's phone rang at 6 a.m. Harold Grimsby's nervous voice crackled through the speaker. "Vincent, I have some difficult news. Diana contacted me directly yesterday. She's filed for divorce and is demanding half of everything, including the business." Vincent had expected this, but hearing it confirmed still felt like a physical blow. "On what grounds?" "Irreconcilable differences. She's also claiming you've been emotionally abusive and that she deserved compensation for 20 years of, and I quote, living with a cold, unfeeling monster." Vincent almost laughed at the irony. He had been cold and calculating in business. Yes, but he had given Diana everything she had ever wanted. He had worked 18-hour days to build their fortune while she enjoyed the lifestyle it provided. "There's more," Harold continued reluctantly. "She wants the college fund transferred to her immediately as part of the divorce settlement. She's claiming it's marital property." "Let me make something very clear, Harold," Vincent said, his voice dropping to that dangerous whisper. "Diana will not get 1 penny of Trevor's money, and she sure as hell won't get half of what I built. If you even consider representing her in this, I'll destroy you professionally and personally. Are we understood?" "Why, yes, Vincent." "Completely understood." After hanging up, Vincent sat in silence for several minutes. Then he picked up his phone and made a call to someone he hadn't spoken to in 5 years, his brother Alex, a former Special Forces operator who now ran a private security firm specializing in discreet problem-solving. "Alex, it's Vincent. I need a favor." "Been wondering when you'd call," Alex replied, his voice carrying the same steel as Vincent's. "Heard about Trevor. I'm sorry. Diana's making a play for everything, and she's got help. I need information on a man named Bradley Morse, and I need it fast. Consider it done. But, Vincent, if you're planning what I think you're planning, remember that some lines can't be uncrossed." Vincent stared out his office window at the swimming pool where Trevor had learned to swim, where they had spent countless summer afternoons planning the boy's future. "They crossed the line first, Alex. Now, they're going to learn what happens when you steal from a Caldwell." Chapter 3. The Boy at the Grave. Vincent drove to Hillcrest Cemetery as the sun began to set, needing solitude to process the destruction of his life. Trevor's grave was marked by a temporary stone, fresh flowers from the funeral still bright against the dark earth. Vincent knelt beside the plot, his hands clenched into fists. "I'm sorry, son," he whispered. "I couldn't protect you from that drunk bastard, and now your mother wants to steal the money I saved for your future. But I promise you this, she won't get away with it." A small sound made him look up. A boy, perhaps 12 years old, stood 20 feet away among the headstones. He was thin and pale, wearing clothes that had seen better days. When the boy turned toward him, Vincent's breath caught in his throat. The resemblance was impossible, yet undeniable. The boy had Trevor's eyes, bright blue and intelligent, and the same stubborn jawline that Vincent recognized in his own mirror. For a moment, grief and exhaustion made Vincent wonder if he was hallucinating. "You're Trevor's dad," the boy said, his voice soft but certain. Vincent stood slowly, his heart hammering. "Who are you?" "My name's Oliver Reed. Trevor was helping me with math at school. He said his dad was the strongest man he knew." The boy's words hit Vincent like a physical blow. Trevor had never mentioned tutoring anyone, but that was typical of his son, always helping others without seeking recognition. "How did you know Trevor?" Vincent asked, studying the boy's face. Oliver looked down at his worn sneakers. "My mom works 3 jobs, so I'm alone a lot after school. Trevor found me crying in the library one day because I was failing algebra. He started tutoring me for free, said smart kids should help each other." Vincent felt something crack inside his chest. Even with a full scholarship to MIT waiting, Trevor had been spending his free time helping a struggling kid no one else cared about. "He talked about you all the time," Oliver continued. "Said you built your company from nothing, that you taught him never to give up. He was really proud of you." "Where's your mother now?" Vincent asked, his mind already working. "At the diner downtown. She works the night shift there and weekends at the grocery store. We live in the apartments behind the strip mall." Vincent knew the place, a rundown complex that had been condemned twice but somehow stayed open. He pulled out his wallet and handed Oliver $200. "This is from Trevor," Vincent lied. "He would have wanted you to have it." Oliver stared at the money with wide eyes. "I can't take this, Mr. Caldwell. It's too much." "Yes, you can. And Oliver, if you ever need anything at all, you call me." Vincent handed the boy his business card. "Trevor wouldn't want you struggling alone." As Oliver walked away, clutching the money, Vincent felt something he hadn't experienced since Trevor's death: purpose. This boy represented everything good about his son, everything Diana was trying to destroy with her greed and betrayal. Vincent's phone buzzed with a text from Alex. "Got what you need on Morse. This guy's worse than you thought. Call me tonight." Another text came in from Marcus. "Diana moved out while you were gone. Took everything valuable she could carry." Harold called. "She's demanding immediate temporary support of $50,000 per month." Vincent read the messages and felt that familiar cold fury settling over him like armor. Diana thought she was being clever, striking while he was grieving and vulnerable. She had no idea that grief was just making him more dangerous. As he walked back to his car, Vincent's mind was already formulating a plan. Diana and Bradley had made one critical mistake. They assumed Vincent would play by conventional rules, that he would accept defeat gracefully like their previous victims. They were about to learn that Vincent Caldwell had never lost a war because he was willing to go further than his enemies ever imagined. The boy at the grave had reminded him what was at stake: not just money or pride, but honor itself. Trevor's legacy would not be tainted by his mother's greed. Vincent would make sure of that, no matter what it cost. Chapter 4. The Hunter Becomes the Hunted. Alex Caldwell sat across from Vincent in the back booth of Murphy's Tavern, a working-class bar where construction crews unwound after brutal days. At 43, Alex carried himself with the controlled violence of a man who had killed for his country and slept soundly afterward. The brothers shared the same steel-gray eyes and unforgiving nature, though Alex's military service had given him skills Vincent could only dream of. "Bradley Morse isn't just a guidance counselor," Alex began, sliding a thick manila folder across the table. "He's a goddamn predator with a system. 3 previous marriages destroyed, always the same pattern. He identifies wealthy, lonely wives, spends months building emotional connections, then moves in for the kill during family crises. Vincent opened the folder, his jaw tightening as he studied surveillance photos of Bradley meeting with Diana at various hotels and restaurants over the past 6 months. The bastard started grooming her right after Trevor announced his MIT acceptance, Vincent muttered. He knew exactly how much money was in that college fund. Gets worse, Alex continued. His ex-wife, Karen Morse, contacted me after I started asking questions. Apparently, Bradley has a gambling problem and owes serious money to some very unpleasant people in Atlantic City. We're talking $250,000 in debt to loan sharks. Vincent looked up sharply. How serious? The kind that break legs first and ask questions later. Bradley's desperate, which explains why he's moving so fast on Diana. He needs that divorce settlement to save his own life. The revelation changed everything. Vincent had assumed this was simple greed, but desperation made people dangerous and unpredictable. Bradley wasn't just stealing from Vincent. He was using Diana as a lifeline to escape his own destruction. There's more, Alex said, pulling out his phone. I had my tech specialist hack Bradley's communications. Want to hear what your loving wife really thinks of you? Alex played an audio recording of a phone conversation between Diana and Bradley from 2 days ago. The funeral was perfect. Diana's voice was cold and calculated. Vincent looked completely broken. This is the perfect time to strike. What about the college fund? Bradley's voice was nervous, desperate. He'll cave eventually. Vincent's always been weak when it comes to emotional manipulation. Once the divorce is final, we'll disappear to somewhere without extradition treaties. I've already been moving money offshore. And if he fights back, what's he going to do? He's just a construction worker who got lucky. I've been documenting his abusive behavior for months. By the time I'm done, he'll be lucky to keep 20% of his assets. Vincent's hands clenched so tightly around his whiskey glass that Alex worried it might shatter. The mask of grief Diana had worn at Trevor's funeral, the tears she had shed, all of it had been an act while she planned to rob their dead son's future. I'm going to destroy them both, Vincent said quietly. Good, Alex replied. Because I've already started. Remember Tommy Torino from high school? The kid who went into the family business. Vincent nodded. Tommy Torino now ran most of the illegal gambling operations in a 3-state area, including the ones Bradley owed money to. Tommy owes you a favor for that construction contract that kept his legitimate businesses afloat during the recession, Alex continued. I called him this morning. Bradley's debt just got sold to some very patient collectors, ones who understand the value of perfect timing. Vincent smiled for the first time since Trevor's death, but it was the predatory grin of a shark smelling blood. What's the plan? Vincent asked. Alex leaned forward, his voice dropping to a whisper. We give Diana exactly what she wants, a weak, broken husband who's ready to surrender. Meanwhile, we build a case that will destroy her so completely she'll wish she had never been born. And Bradley's going to discover that some debts can never be repaid. Vincent nodded slowly. 20 years of marriage had taught Diana his business tactics, his straightforward approach to problem solving. She expected him to hire lawyers and fight in court, to play by rules that favored the sympathetic widow over the cold businessman. She had no idea that his brother had spent 15 years learning how to destroy enemies who thought they were safe. One more thing, Alex said, sliding a photograph across the table. I had someone watching Diana's new apartment. Guess who's been staying there every night? The photo showed Bradley leaving Diana's building at dawn, carrying an overnight bag. Vincent studied his wife's betrayer, a soft, pampered man who had never faced real hardship, never built anything with his own hands. He looked scared, Vincent observed. He should be. Words already spreading through certain circles that Bradley Morse is under new management. His loan shark friends are very interested in meeting the man who bought their debt. Vincent finished his whiskey and stood up. How long do we have? Diana's lawyer filed for expedited proceedings. They want a hearing next week to establish temporary support and asset division. They're hoping to pressure you into a quick settlement. Perfect, Vincent said. Let them think they're winning. Meanwhile, I want everything, bank records, communications, travel history, everything. If Diana's been moving money offshore, I want to know where every penny went. As the brothers left the bar, Vincent felt something he hadn't experienced in days: anticipation. Diana and Bradley had played their hand too early, revealing their desperation and greed. Now Vincent would show them what happened when someone tried to steal from a man who had nothing left to lose. The hunt was on, and Vincent Caldwell had never lost a hunt in his life. Chapter 5. The Trap is Set. Vincent sat in Harold Grimsby's office, playing the role of a broken man perfectly. He had let his usually immaculate appearance slip: unshaven, wrinkled clothes, the look of someone consumed by grief and defeat. Across the conference table, Diana's lawyer, Patricia Kellerman, watched him with barely concealed satisfaction. "Mr. Caldwell," Patricia began, her voice dripping with false sympathy, "I understand this is difficult, but we need to discuss the immediate financial arrangements. Mrs. Caldwell requires $50,000 monthly support while the divorce proceedings continue." Vincent looked up with red-rimmed eyes, the picture of devastation. "50,000? I don't know if the business can support that right now." Diana, sitting beside her lawyer in a perfectly tailored black dress, leaned forward with mock concern. "Vincent, darling, I know this is hard, but I did sacrifice my career for 20 years to support your ambitions. Surely that's worth something." The performance was masterful. Anyone watching would see a grieving widow trying to secure her future while her emotionally destroyed husband struggled to process the loss of his son and marriage simultaneously. "The business has been struggling," Vincent lied smoothly. "Trevor's medical bills, the funeral costs. I'm not sure we can maintain current operations much longer." Harold Grimsby, who knew the truth about Vincent's financial situation, shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Caldwell Construction was worth over $50 million and had 3 major contracts lined up for the next year. "Perhaps we could arrange for a financial audit," Patricia suggested, "just to establish a clear picture of assets." "Of course," Vincent replied, his voice hollow. "I just want this to be over with. I can't handle much more." After the meeting, Vincent drove to a small coffee shop 20 miles outside town where Alex was waiting. His brother was studying aerial photographs of Diana's new apartment building when Vincent slid into the opposite booth. "How'd it go?" Alex asked. "They bought it completely. Diana thinks she's got me on the ropes." Vincent's demeanor had shifted instantly from broken husband to calculating predator. "They're pushing for a quick settlement." "Good, because I've got some interesting news about your wife's financial activities." Alex spread several documents across the table. "Diana's been busy. She opened 3 separate accounts in the Cayman Islands over the past year, all under shell corporations." Vincent studied the bank statements Alex had somehow acquired. $2.8 million? Where the hell did she get that kind of money? "From you, brother. She's been skimming from the household accounts, selling jewelry and art pieces, even took a secret loan against the house. Diana's been planning this divorce for over a year." The revelation hit Vincent like a physical blow. While he had been working 18-hour days to build their fortune, while Trevor had been getting ready for college, Diana had been systematically stealing from their family to fund her escape plan. "There's more," Alex continued. "Remember that girl's trip to Europe she took last spring? She wasn't sightseeing. She was setting up residency paperwork in Switzerland, non-extradition country with very favorable laws for wealthy divorcees." Vincent's hands clenched into fists. Diana hadn't just betrayed their marriage. She had been planning to disappear entirely, leaving him with nothing but legal bills and heartbreak. "What about Bradley?" Alex smiled grimly. "Bradley's having a very bad week. His gambling debts got called in early, his car was repossessed, and his apartment building is suddenly enforcing lease violations he didn't know existed. He's been staying at Diana's place full-time now. You've been busy. Tommy Torino's people are very thorough. Bradley's starting to understand that his problems won't disappear with a divorce settlement. In fact, his problems are just beginning." Vincent leaned back in his booth, his mind racing. Diana and Bradley thought they were manipulating a grieving, broken man into surrendering his fortune. Instead, they were walking into a trap that would destroy them both. "I want to visit Oliver Reed tomorrow," Vincent said suddenly. Alex looked surprised. The kid from the cemetery? Trevor's legacy isn't going to be his mother's greed. I'm setting up a scholarship fund in his name, and Oliver's going to be the first recipient. That's surprisingly sentimental for you. Vincent's eyes hardened. It's not sentiment. It's justice. Diana wants to steal money that was meant for education? Fine. I'll make sure it goes to kids who actually deserve it. Kids like Oliver who understand what it means to work for something. Alex nodded approvingly. What about the divorce hearing next week? I'm going to give them exactly what they want. A complete victory. Temporary custody of assets, control of the business, everything. Let them think they've won. And then, Vincent smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Then I'm going to show them what happens when you try to steal from Caldwell. Diana want to play games with our dead son's money? I'm going to make her pay for every penny she's stolen. And Bradley's going to wish he had never heard our family name. As the brothers left the coffee shop, Vincent felt the familiar cold focus settling over him. This was what he did best: identify a target, plan their destruction, then execute with ruthless precision. Diana and Bradley had made one fatal mistake. They had assumed Vincent's grief made him weak. They were about to learn that grief had only made him more dangerous. Chapter 6: The Perfect Victim. The divorce hearing was a masterpiece of legal theater. Vincent sat slumped in his chair, occasionally wiping his eyes with a handkerchief while Diana's lawyer painted him as an emotionally abusive workaholic who had driven his wife to desperation. Diana herself delivered a performance worthy of an Academy Award, describing 20 years of loneliness and neglect while Vincent built his business empire. Judge Morrison, a stern woman in her 60s, listened with increasing sympathy as Diana described her sacrifice of career ambitions to support her husband's relentless pursuit of wealth. Your Honor, Patricia Kellerman concluded, Mrs. Caldwell has been forced to start over at 52 years old, with no career prospects and no financial security. The requested support is not only reasonable, it's necessary for her survival. Vincent's lawyer, a deliberately incompetent attorney Alex had recommended, fumbled through a weak defense focused on business difficulties and emotional distress. Harold Grimsby watched from the gallery, visibly uncomfortable with the deception but bound by attorney-client privilege. Mr. Caldwell, Judge Morrison addressed Vincent directly. Do you contest your wife's request for temporary support? Vincent looked up with hollow eyes, the picture of a broken man. No, Your Honor. I just want Diana to be taken care of. She's been through enough. Diana squeezed her lawyer's arm, struggling to contain her satisfaction. The performance was working perfectly. Very well, Judge Morrison ruled. I'm granting the petitioner's request for monthly support of $50,000 to be paid from the marital assets. Additionally, Mrs. Caldwell is granted temporary residence in the family home while asset division is determined. Vincent's shoulders sagged as if the world had just collapsed around him. In the gallery, several observers, all carefully placed by Alex, murmured sympathetically about the poor man's obvious devastation. After the hearing, Vincent met Diana in the courthouse hallway. She approached him with mock concern, her hand briefly touching his arm. Vincent, I know this is difficult, she said, her voice perfectly modulated for the watching reporters Alex had tipped off. But this is for the best. We both need to move on. I know, Vincent replied, his voice barely above a whisper. I never thought it would end like this. Trevor wouldn't want us to destroy each other, Diana continued, her tone suggesting maternal wisdom rather than calculated manipulation. Vincent nodded numbly, then walked away like a man carrying the weight of the world. Behind him, Diana smiled triumphantly at her lawyer. 3 hours later, Vincent was sitting in Oliver Reed's living room, which was little more than a cramped apartment with peeling wallpaper and secondhand furniture. Oliver's mother, Marie, was a thin woman with tired eyes who looked older than her 34 years. Mr. Caldwell, I don't understand, Marie said, staring at the check Vincent had just handed her. $25,000? This is too much. It's not too much, Vincent replied. It's exactly what Trevor would have wanted. This is the beginning of a scholarship fund in his name, and Oliver is our first recipient. Oliver, who had been silently listening from the kitchen table where his homework was spread out, looked up with those bright blue eyes that reminded Vincent so painfully of his son. "Mr. Caldwell, I promise I'll work really hard," the boy said solemnly. "I won't waste Trevor's gift." Vincent felt something crack in his chest. This was what real gratitude looked like. Not Diana's calculated greed or Bradley's desperate manipulation, but genuine appreciation from a child who understood the value of opportunity. "There's more," Vincent continued, pulling out additional documents. "I'm establishing a trust fund that will cover Oliver's education through college, and I'm offering you a position with my company, Marie. Administrative work, full benefits, starting at $60,000 a year." Marie burst into tears, covering her face with her hands. "I don't. Why are you doing this for us?" "Because Trevor saw something special in Oliver," Vincent lied smoothly. The truth was more complex. Oliver represented everything Diana was trying to destroy, everything good about family and loyalty and earned success. As Vincent left the Reed apartment, his phone buzzed with a message from Alex. "Diana and Bradley celebrated at the Ritz tonight. Charged $800 dinner to your credit card. They're not even trying to hide it anymore." Vincent smiled grimly. Diana's arrogance was perfect. Every public display of her victory, every expensive meal charged to his accounts, every interview with sympathetic reporters was building a narrative that would ultimately destroy her. His phone rang, and Harold Grimsby's nervous voice filled the car. "Vincent, I have to ask, what exactly are you planning? Diana's lawyer is already talking about the final settlement hearing. They want everything resolved within 30 days. "Perfect," Vincent replied. "Tell them I'll agree to whatever they want. Full asset division, minimal alimony resistance, the works. I just want this nightmare to end." "But Vincent, that would cost you." "I know exactly what it will cost me. Harold, just play your part." After hanging up, Vincent drove to the cemetery where Trevor lay. The temporary headstone had been replaced with a beautiful granite marker that read, "Trevor Michael Caldwell, beloved son, his legacy lives on." Vincent knelt beside the grave, speaking quietly to the darkness. "They think they've won, son. Diana's already spending money she hasn't earned yet, and Bradley thinks he's found his meal ticket. But they don't understand. This was never about the money. This is about making sure your memory isn't tainted by their greed." A cool wind rustled through the trees, and Vincent stood, his resolve hardening like steel. The trap was set, the bait had been taken, and now all that remained was the spring. Diana and Bradley had 30 days to enjoy their victory. It would be the last 30 days of happiness they would ever know. Chapter 7. The Reckoning Begins. Diana Caldwell stood in the kitchen of her family's estate, now legally hers by temporary court order, directing the removal of Vincent's personal belongings. Professional movers boxed up 20 years of his life, while she sipped champagne and planned her future with Bradley. The man himself lounged by the pool, already comfortable in his new role as the lady of the manor's companion. "Careful with that," Diana instructed as movers handled Vincent's awards and business certificates. "Those might be worth something at auction." Her phone buzzed with a call from Patricia Kellerman, her lawyer, who was practically giddy with their success. "Diana, I have wonderful news. Vincent's agreed to the final settlement terms. He's not even requesting a business valuation hearing. Frankly, I've never seen such a complete capitulation." Diana smiled triumphantly. He always was weak underneath all that bluster. "What's the timeline?" "Final hearing is scheduled for tomorrow morning. Bring your passport. Once this is signed, you'll want to travel quickly to avoid any complications." After hanging up, Diana joined Bradley by the pool. He was reading financial documents, his face pale with stress despite their apparent victory. "What's wrong with you?" Diana asked, settling into the lounge chair beside him. "We've won everything." Bradley looked up with haunted eyes. "Something doesn't feel right, Diana. Vincent's giving up too easily. In my experience, men like him don't surrender without a fight. Men like him." Diana laughed. "Bradley, you're a guidance counselor from a small town. Vincent's just a construction worker who got lucky. Neither of you understands real power." Bradley's phone rang, interrupting their conversation. His face went white as he listened to the voice on the other end. "Who was that?" Diana asked when he hung up. My creditors. They want to meet tonight. Something about new payment terms. Diana waved dismissively. After tomorrow, you'll have enough money to pay off all your debts and still live like a king. Stop worrying. What Diana didn't know was that Vincent was at that moment sitting in his new apartment across town, watching live surveillance feeds from cameras Alex had installed throughout the estate. Every conversation, every smug comment, every display of arrogance was being recorded for posterity. "They're pathetic," Alex commented, watching Bradley pace nervously by the pool. He knows something's wrong, but can't figure out what. Vincent's attention was focused on Diana's casual cruelty as she discussed selling Trevor's belongings. Her complete lack of remorse, her eagerness to profit from their dead son's memory, confirmed everything he needed to know about her character. "Time for phase 2, Vincent said quietly. Alex made a phone call, speaking in code to someone on the other end. Within minutes, Vincent's phone buzzed with a message, "Package delivered." Across town, Bradley's phone rang again. This time, the voice belonged to Tommy Torino himself. "Mr. Morse, this is Tommy. I think we need to have a face-to-face conversation about your situation. Tonight, 10 p.m., Warehouse District. Come alone." Bradley's hand shook as he ended the call. He had heard stories about Tommy Torino, whispered warnings about men who borrowed money from the wrong people, disappeared permanently. "I have to go out," Bradley told Diana, his voice barely steady. "Where?" "Business meeting. About the debts. I'll be back later." Diana barely looked up for her magazine. "Whatever. Just don't do anything to jeopardize tomorrow's hearing." As Bradley drove toward what he assumed would be his death, Vincent was implementing the next phase of his plan. At exactly 9 p.m., while Diana was soaking in a bubble bath and planning her new life, every major news outlet in the state received an anonymous package. The package contained detailed financial records showing Diana's systematic theft from family accounts, her secret overseas banking arrangements, and recorded conversations between her and Bradley discussing their plan to destroy Vincent emotionally and financially. But the most damaging evidence was a recording from just hours after Trevor's funeral, where Diana laughed about how perfectly timed her son's death had been for her divorce plans. By 10 p.m., the story was breaking on every local news channel. "Wealthy widow's shocking betrayal" dominated the headlines, with audio clips of Diana's coldest comments playing on repeat. Diana's phone started ringing incessantly as reporters demanded comments. But she was still in her bath, blissfully unaware that her carefully constructed victim narrative was crumbling in real time. Meanwhile, at the warehouse meeting, Bradley discovered that Tommy Torino was surprisingly reasonable. "Relax, kid," Tommy said, lighting a cigarette in the abandoned building. "I'm not here to hurt you. I'm here to make you an offer." "An offer?" "Your debt's been bought by someone who has very specific plans for you. Tomorrow morning, you're going to do exactly what he tells you when he tells you. In exchange, your debt disappears completely." Bradley's relief was overwhelming. What do I have to do?" Tommy smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "You're going to tell the truth, Bradley. Every detail about your relationship with Diana Caldwell, every plan you made together, every lie you helped her construct. You're going to destroy her so completely that she'll never recover. But the divorce settlement. There won't be a divorce settlement. By tomorrow afternoon, Diana Caldwell will be facing federal fraud charges and possible extradition to answer for her overseas financial crimes." Bradley stared in horror as the reality of his situation became clear. He had been played by an expert, manipulated into betraying Diana by someone who understood exactly how to exploit his weaknesses. "Who bought my debt?" Bradley whispered. Tommy's smile widened. "Someone Diana should never have tried to steal from. Someone who doesn't forgive, doesn't forget, and never loses." As Bradley drove home in a daze, Vincent watched the news coverage with grim satisfaction. Diana's public image was in flames. Bradley was now his unwilling ally, and tomorrow's hearing would be remembered as one of the most spectacular courtroom reversals in local history. The reckoning had begun, and Diana Caldwell had no idea what was about to hit her. Chapter 8: The Courtroom Massacre. Diana Caldwell arrived at the courthouse the next morning in a designer suit, her confidence unshaken despite a sleepless night fielding angry calls from reporters. She had dismissed the news coverage as sensationalized gossip and instructed Patricia Kellerman to proceed with the settlement hearing as planned. The media will move on to the next story by next week, Diana told her lawyer as they walked through a gauntlet of cameras and shouting journalists. Vincent's probably behind this somehow, trying to make me look bad. It won't work. Patricia looked less confident. Diana, we should consider postponing. The recordings they're playing are taken out of context, Diana interrupted. Grief makes people say things they don't mean. Any jury will understand that. What Diana didn't see was Bradley Morse sitting in his car across the street, his hands shaking as he stared at the courthouse entrance. His phone had been buzzing all morning with instructions from Tommy Torino's people, detailed directions about exactly what he would say and when. Vincent entered through a side entrance, still playing the role of a broken man, but now accompanied by a new legal team, 3 high-powered attorneys from the state capitol who specialized in complex fraud cases. The change in representation was the first sign that something had shifted. Judge Morrison called the hearing to order, expecting a routine settlement approval. Instead, she found herself presiding over a legal earthquake. Your Honor, Vincent's lead attorney, Catherine Hayes, stood immediately. We request a postponement of these proceedings pending a criminal investigation into fraudulent concealment of assets. Patricia Kellerman shot to her feet. Objection. This is clearly a desperate attempt to delay. Your Honor, Catherine continued calmly. We have evidence that Mrs. Caldwell has systematically embezzled over $2.8 million from marital assets, hidden funds and offshore accounts, and engaged in conspiracy to defraud through false statements to this court. Judge Morrison's expression darkened. These are serious allegations. Counselor, do you have proof? Catherine smiled. We do, Your Honor. We call our first witness, Bradley Morse. Diana's head snapped around as Bradley entered the courtroom, his face pale but determined. He had made his choice between prison and betrayal, and survival had won. Mr. Morse, Catherine began, please describe your relationship with the defendant. Bradley's voice was barely above a whisper at first, but it grew stronger as he spoke. Diana Caldwell and I have been having an affair for 8 months. We planned to divorce her husband and split the settlement money. Diana started to stand, but Patricia pulled her back down. The courtroom erupted in murmurs as reporters scribbled frantically. Did Mrs. Caldwell ever discuss her financial arrangements during your relationship? Yes. She showed me bank statements from accounts in the Cayman Islands. She said she had been moving money there for over a year, preparing for the divorce. And did she ever express feelings about her son's death? Bradley hesitated, then delivered the killing blow. She said Trevor's death was perfect timing for the divorce, that Vincent would be too emotionally destroyed to fight for his assets. The courtroom fell silent, except for the sound of Diana's sharp intake of breath. Even Patricia Kellerman looked stunned by the revelation. Catherine introduced evidence methodically. Bank records, recorded conversations, travel documents showing Diana's trips to establish foreign residency. Each piece of evidence was another nail in Diana's coffin. Your Honor, Catherine concluded, Mrs. Caldwell is not a grieving widow seeking reasonable support. She is a calculating criminal who used her son's death as cover for the largest theft in this county's history. Judge Morrison's voice was ice-cold when she spoke. Mrs. Caldwell, I am immediately freezing all marital assets pending a criminal investigation. You are ordered to surrender your passport and remain within the state. Furthermore, I am referring this matter to the district attorney for possible prosecution. Diana finally found her voice, standing and screaming. This is insane. Vincent orchestrated all of this. He's framing me. Sit down, Mrs. Caldwell. Judge Morrison snapped, or I'll have you removed from my courtroom. As Diana collapsed back in her chair, Vincent finally allowed himself to look directly at her. The woman who had called him weak, who had planned to steal their dead son's future, now sat exposed and humiliated before a room full of witnesses. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed Vincent as he emerged with his legal team. For the first time in weeks, he stood tall and confident, the broken man persona completely abandoned. Mr. Caldwell, how does it feel to have your wife's deception exposed? Vincent looked directly into the cameras, his voice carrying the authority that had built an empire. My son Trevor believed in justice and integrity. Today, justice was served. No one, and I mean no one, steals from the memory of my boy and gets away with it. What's next for you? I'm establishing the Trevor Caldwell Scholarship Foundation to help deserving students like my son achieve their dreams. Diana wanted to steal money meant for education. I'm making sure it goes to kids who will honor Trevor's legacy. As Vincent walked away, Diana was being led from the courthouse in handcuffs, charged with fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy. Her designer suit couldn't hide the fact that she was just another criminal who had underestimated her victim. Bradley Morse disappeared that afternoon, relocating to a different state under an assumed identity provided by Tommy Torino's organization. His debt was forgiven, but he would spend the rest of his life looking over his shoulder, knowing that Vincent Caldwell had the power to find him anywhere. The war was over, and Vincent had won so completely that his enemies would never recover. But there was one final act still to come. Chapter 9, Legacy of Steel. 6 months later, Vincent stood in the gleaming conference room of the Trevor Caldwell Foundation, watching as Oliver Reed signed his scholarship agreement. The boy had grown taller, more confident, his bright future now secured by the very money Diana had tried to steal. "Thank you, Mr. Caldwell," Oliver said solemnly. "I promise I'll make Trevor proud." "You already have," Vincent replied, meaning every word. Marie Reed, now working as the Foundation's administrative director, beamed with pride as she watched her son secure his future. Vincent had given them more than money. He had given them hope and purpose. Diana Caldwell sat in a federal prison, serving a 12-year sentence for fraud and money laundering. Her legal bills had consumed what little legitimate assets she had left, and her name had become synonymous with betrayal and greed. She would be 64 when she was released, with no money, no reputation, and no future. Bradley Morse had lasted 3 months in his new life before his gambling addiction resurfaced. He currently worked as a night janitor in a factory under constant surveillance by people who ensured he never tried to contact anyone from his past. His teaching credentials had been permanently revoked, his pension forfeited. Vincent's construction empire had not only survived the scandal but thrived. The publicity had brought in new contracts from clients who respected his integrity and ruthlessness in equal measure. Caldwell Construction was now worth over $70 million and employed 300 people. Alex Caldwell joined Vincent in the Foundation's main office, where a bronze statue of Trevor dominated the entrance. The 17-year-old's face was captured in bronze, smiling with the confidence of someone who believed the future held infinite possibilities. "Any regrets?" Alex asked his brother. Vincent considered the question carefully. "About Diana and Bradley?" "None. They chose their path when they decided to steal from Trevor's memory. I just made sure they faced the consequences." "What about the methods we used?" Vincent's smile was cold as winter steel. "I built my fortune by being willing to do what others wouldn't." Diana wanted to play games with a Caldwell. She learned what that actually means. The Foundation's first annual scholarship ceremony was held that evening in the ballroom of the city's finest hotel. 50 deserving students received awards ranging from $5,000 to full college funding, each one selected based on merit and need rather than politics or connections. Oliver Reed, as the Foundation's first recipient, gave a speech that brought tears to many eyes. He spoke about second chances, about the kindness of strangers, and about honoring the memory of someone he had barely known but who had changed his life completely. Vincent watched from the head table, surrounded by community leaders and business partners who now saw him as both a philanthropist and someone never to be crossed. The duality suited him perfectly. After the ceremony, Vincent drove alone to Hillcrest Cemetery. Trevor's grave was surrounded by fresh flowers from scholarship recipients and their families, a reminder that good could emerge from even the darkest betrayals. "I kept my promise, son," Vincent said quietly. "Your money is helping kids who deserve it, not the woman who tried to steal your future." Diana's in prison where she belongs, and Bradley learned what happens to people who cross our family. A cool breeze rustled through the trees, and Vincent felt a sense of peace he hadn't experienced since Trevor's death. Justice had been served, completely and without mercy. His phone buzzed with a text from Marie Reed. Oliver got his first college acceptance letter today. MIT, just like Trevor. Thank you for everything. Vincent smiled, understanding that Trevor's legacy would live on through the students they helped, through the opportunities they created, through the lives they changed. Diana had tried to destroy that legacy for money, but instead she had only made it stronger. As Vincent walked back to his car, he passed another grave, that of the drunk driver who had killed his son. The man had died in prison 6 months ago, victim of what the guards called an unfortunate accident involving a fall downstairs. Vincent hadn't ordered that death, but he hadn't mourned it either. Some debts could only be paid in blood, and the man who had destroyed Trevor's future had finally paid his. The Caldwell name now meant something different in their community. It represented justice and philanthropy, but also warned that crossing the family came with a price too terrible to imagine. Vincent drove home to his new house, smaller than the estate, but perfect for a man starting over. On his desk was a letter from Oliver Reed, describing his excitement about college and his determination to study engineering like his hero Trevor. For the first time since his son's death, Vincent felt genuinely happy. Diana had wanted to steal Trevor's future and use it to fund her escape. Instead, she had ensured that Trevor's memory would inspire dozens of young people to achieve greatness. The irony was perfect, and Vincent savored it like fine wine. Diana Caldwell had learned the most important lesson of her life. Never try to steal from a man who has nothing left to lose and everything to avenge.